Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. The Saturday slate should be a fun slate. Let's start with, talk about a big one. Number 1 Auburn going to Rupp Arena. This is a Saturday afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern game on ABC. We are recording before there's any point spread, anything like that. My guess is that Auburn will be probably a 4.5 point favorite. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. So first of all, Rupp Arena should be rocking for this game. I looked it up on Thursday morning. Get-in price is already close to like $200. And that's on Thursday morning. So by Friday night into Saturday, this could be the hottest ticket that we've had at Rupp all year. I remember Florida was a huge ticket. Alabama was a huge ticket. This one should be no exception. And I think we're going to get a good game between two teams that I like them a lot. From the Auburn side of things, we talked about Kentucky, Oklahoma. Auburn destroyed Ole Miss on Wednesday night. And it's kind of funny. I was thinking about this, is that, they beat Alabama a few Saturdays ago. They play Georgia at home. They don't play great. They play Arkansas at home. They don't play great. And I do tend to wonder if they started hearing that noise, people like myself, people in the media saying, oh, maybe Duke's better. Houston's playing pretty well right now. And Auburn's like, let's just beat a top 25 team by 30 just to remind everybody who we are, what we're about, and how good we are. So Auburn obliterated Ole Miss. Kentucky, to their credit, took care of business against Oklahoma. We talked about that game earlier in the show. But listen, it wasn't always pretty. But again, how can you blame Kentucky? You're moving guys in and out of the lineup. Lamont Butler's back. Then he's not. Now he's back again. Jackson Robinson comes back. He plays. He gets hurt in this game again against Oklahoma. And so, we obviously don't have any injury updates. I assume Lamont Butler will be good to go. I assume Jackson Robinson will not be good to go. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and take the Auburn Tigers to go to Rupp Arena and win. That's not an indictment on Kentucky. That's not an indictment on they're overrated, they're this, they're that. The truth of the matter is that Auburn, they're just insane. And you look at the places that they have already won this year at SEC play. This is obviously a team that has played a bunch of very big road games against some very good teams. And they, for the most part, have not missed a beat. Beat Ole Miss at Ole Miss earlier this year. That's an NCAA tournament team. Won at Texas. This is a team that also throughout the year, as we saw a few games ago, destroyed all Alabama at Alabama when Alabama was ranked the number 2 team in the country. So Auburn's not afraid of a big road environment, but also I just think this is a bad matchup for Kentucky. Kentucky, they're not super big down low. They don't have a bunch of size. They don't do necessarily well with really physical teams in the paint. Amari Williams, as I said, kind of banged up his ankle. He was fine because he came back in that game against Oklahoma. But you talk about an Auburn team with Chaney Johnson, with Janai Broome, with all of those guys down low, that just feels like a tough matchup for Kentucky in this game. And so I do think that Auburn ends up winning. I'll say final score like 87-81. I don't think Kentucky gets blown out. I think it's tough. I think it's physical. But I do think that Auburn will find a way to get the win. By the way, producer Matt is in my ear telling me, last time Auburn won at Rupp Arena, January of 88. So we will see if they can get the job done. By the way, the other big note here is that an Auburn win and an Alabama loss would give Auburn the outright SEC title. Alabama we'll get to in a minute. But if Auburn wins this game, they will essentially have clinched the SEC title. We'll see what happens. But yeah, this is a big one. Rupp Arena. It's going to be crazy. I'm jealous to any of you who will be there, but I do like Auburn to get the win. We just mentioned Alabama. They will go to the place that I call Thompson Bowling Arena. Now, they call it the Food City Center now. I'm sure Food City is paying a lot of money to have their name on that building. It'll always be Thompson Bowling to me. But Tennessee hosting Alabama. By the way, Alabama's final 3 games: at Tennessee, Florida at home, at Auburn. Like, you could have, listen, I talked about it with my buddy Ryan Fowler on his show on Wednesday, but it's like, you could look at it as 2 ways. One, that is an insane stretch The counter to that is, and I know this is what Nate Oates is selling his team, all of our opportunities are right in front of us. You go 3-0, you go probably 2-1 in that game, and you don't in that stretch, and you don't take a terrible loss at the SEC tournament, you're going to be a number one seed in the NCAA tournament. So at Tennessee, Florida at home, Alabama finishes the regular season at Auburn. And it's just, it should be a really fun game. It should be an entertaining game. And I'll say this, it's going to sound weird. I think it's a game featuring two teams that I think are still, as weird as it sounds, trying to figure themselves out, which sounds crazy because we are now in the last day or so of February into March. But with Tennessee, again, it's funny. I was on radio in Knoxville earlier this week, and I was on with my buddy Russell Smith. And basically, we talked about the fact that, like, I think Tennessee, it's hard to know what to expect from them because they're two different teams. When Chaz Lanier is cooking, they are as good as any team in college basketball, maybe outside of Auburn. When Chaz Lanier is not cooking, they can lose to just about anybody. I think the last two games are kind of reflective of that, right? Chaz Lanier goes for 30 at Texas A&M. Tennessee wins at Texas A&M. It's a great game. Chaz Lanier struggles. I think he had 13, 14 points against LSU, didn't shoot the ball well. It was a 6-point game. LSU had a chance to win it, and Tennessee had to rely on their defense. So it's a game that I think we're going to find out, like, can Tennessee get consistency from Chaz Lanier over the next month? If they can get back to the Elite Eight. They can get to their first Final Four. If they don't, they're probably a team that Sweet 16 is probably their ceiling based entirely on their defense. Alabama's the opposite. Alabama has no problem putting the ball in the basket. The defense has not been good enough, but to their credit, maybe starting to figure things out. Certainly coming off probably their best back-to-back games of the SEC season. They beat Kentucky at home last week, a game against Kentucky where, again, with Alabama, started out slow, didn't look good. Then it was like midway through the first half, just flipped a switch, kicked Kentucky's butt, and ran away with it. And then you talk about kicking butt and running away with stuff. I'm not great at math. 111-73 win against Mississippi State. If that math is correct, that's a 38-point win over an NCAA tournament team. So Alabama is, I think, quietly figuring themselves out. And I'll do this. I will pick Alabama to pull off the upset. I think it'll be an upset. We don't have a point spread yet as I'm recording here on Thursday afternoon. I think Alabama finds a way to win this game. Alabama, to me, I still think their ceiling is as high as anybody, maybe not named Auburn. I don't know if they're consistent enough to do it for 6 straight games. But when they come in on the road, hostile environment, I think that this is a game that they get the win. I don't want to say it could get ugly, but I mean, if they start making shots, I mean, they could win this one going away. I will say that Tennessee's defense does enough to keep it close. I will say 80-60. I'll say 80-71 final score. Alabama gets the win. Tennessee's still a good team, but I think Alabama at its best is as good as anybody. By the way, you talk about the schedule just breaking nice for the SEC. We knew in the preseason that Auburn and Kentucky would probably be a big game. We knew that Tennessee and Alabama would be a big game. I don't think anybody had Florida and Texas A&M. This game is in Gainesville as a top 15, top 20 type matchup late in the season. By the way, shout out to the schedule makers. Texas A&M playing the last game on the SEC network, so they can't screw up the schedule this time. But this game is at the O-Dome, 8:30 Eastern time. I'll be real. I think Florida wins. I think they win convincingly. We don't have a point spread yet, but this will be my best bet of the weekend, barring something shocking. Bottom line with A&M, I know they've lost 2 straight, but Florida is also coming off a loss as well. And so when I look at Florida, they're going to be as motivated as A&M is. And if they were on an 8-game winning streak, maybe they're not as fired up, but they're fighting for a number 1 seed. They're fighting for that double bye in Nashville at the SEC tournament. And then beyond that, I also just think it's a bad matchup for A&M. A&M, as we've discussed time and time again, physical, tough, great defense or great rebounding team, especially on the offensive glass. You know who is as good rebounding as Texas A&M? It's the Florida Gators. We've talked about Florida all season long. They got a bunch of, skinny dudes that hang out on the perimeter that you don't think they're great rebounders. They are a great rebounding team. And so in my opinion, this one, it just feels like two teams that want to do kind of the same thing, but Florida is way better at it at all 5 positions. I like Florida to win this one going away. I'll say 84-68. Florida wins. Florida dominates. Really quickly, let's go to the Big 12. Top 25 matchup. Number 22, Arizona. Number 9, Iowa State. This is another one. late night game, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central time. So Hilton Coliseum is going to be rocking. Is Hilton Coliseum going to have some Hilton magic? That's a big question because Hilton Coliseum kind of needs some Hilton magic because Iowa State ain't playing very well, okay? So they lost a few games ago in a game where they had both of their top scorers out with injury. That was obviously Curtis Jones as well as Keyshawn Gilbert. So they lose 2 games ago last week at Houston. No shame in that. Then they go on the road to Oklahoma State, who is not very good, currently sitting at 14th in a 16-team SEC in a Big 12, and they lose at Oklahoma State as well. Now, the good news is Curtis Jones did come back. The bad news is Keyshawn Gilbert is still out. We don't know if Keyshawn Gilbert will be back. Arizona, on the other hand, listen, the polls are what they are. They're not the 22nd best team in college basketball. To their credit, they kicked the crap out of Utah. They're playing well. I know the stat sheet will tell you they lost 3 of their last 5. One was to Houston, no shame in that. One was the controversial ending against BYU. I had no problem with the foul call. Doesn't change that it was a controversial ending. Kansas State was playing well when they lost him as well. So I think Arizona is actually playing very well, all things considered. Look at this game. It's going to be physical. It's going to be tough. I do like the Wildcats. I just think the Wildcats are a little bit of an underrated team. I don't think they get enough credit for how well they've been playing first year in the Big 12, handling the physicality, handling the toughness. And listen, Caleb Love, it's a gift and a curse. He has his moments. He has his highs. He has his lows. But 27 against BYU, 23 against Utah, pretty efficient in both games as well, which I think is key. I still think Arizona, they're going to end up on the 3-4 line, something like that. They are a dangerous team. By the way, kind of worth noting as well on this, Arizona alone in second place. Texas Tech is playing at Kansas on Saturday. So if Kansas can get the win, we know Kansas hasn't been playing well. Arizona would have a 2-game lead for second place in this league. If Arizona loses, or if Texas Tech beats Kansas, if Texas Tech beats Kansas, Arizona loses, then we would have a 2-way tie for second place. So this is kind of important again for seeding, etc.